Hello and welcome to Read. Today, as promised, I'm doing a sort of library bookshelf tour. I say sort of because as viewers of the channel will know, about 6-7 months ago I moved out of one place and moved into this place, and I obviously didn't bring every book that I own, and so I only really have sort of this string of fiction on the floor, and I've also got some non-fiction on a table which I'm going to show you. But so usually I do library bookshelf tours at the end of the year because it is fun to just be like, hey, now look at all these books that I have. But the cool thing is that I recently did a Q&A and somebody asked me, if you had a selection of books that you were going to take with you to read for 5 years, what would it be? And that is a hard question to answer, but I realized that I've almost kind of sort of emulated that with the amount of books that I have here, simply because I know there's a fixed time in which I'll be spending here, which, I guess 2 or 3 years down the line, I'll let you know, or you'll see how my life is going. But yeah, basically the premise of it here is that I really definitely don't want to have too many books here. So if I buy a new fiction book, or if I buy a whatever, then unless I can easily fit it on the floor, it basically, I just pack it up and take it back to the library at the family home. So yeah, this is cool because it's kind of a selected, collected, incomplete library tour, and it's just more or less going to show you where my reading and where my mind is going to be for the next 2 or 3 years. So I'm gonna do just a couple of general pans of scans of what I've got, but then I'm going to just set the camera on the floor and point it at the books. I'm not going to, name every single book as it comes up, because you can always just pause the video and read the title if you care. But I will just kind of point out or mention maybe books that are on my radar, or new books that I've gotten that I know I definitely haven't talked about on the channel before. So it's going to be a kind of casual, easy library tour. But yeah, basically, let's get started. Slight cut, different video. Another thing I forgot to mention is that something I like about this setup is that, sometimes when you see these big library tours, there's always this idea of, has this person actually read these books? How many of them have they read? Because of the fact that this is a kind of to-be-read library, basically, unless I've made a video for it on this channel, or I kind of explicitly mention it, there's a good chance that I actually haven't read most of these. So yeah, rest assured, I'm not kind of pretending that I've read all of these. In fact, I've not read most of these books. So starting with just a quick scan of these books I have on the side. So I've mentioned before on the channel that I have this complete unabridged Mahabharata, which I'm very keen to spend some set of time in my 40s reading, but I don't think I'm going to do it any time before then. And some of the other books I have here are either compilations, or they are books where we don't have a very specific named person who's written them. And probably the most interesting one that I want to read is the Poems of the Masters, translated by Red Pine. Okay, sweet. So starting with A's and B's, probably the most fun or interesting thing that I've got here is just that I have 5 John Barth novels, and John Barth has probably now become the author who I own the most of his work, but I've read comparatively the least of it, where I've read The Floating Opera at the End of the Road, and I've also read Lost in the Funhouse. But on top of these 5 books, I also think I own another 3 back at the family house. The cool one, I got this novel Letters. This is the most recent one, and this is actually a UK first edition, which I got for 17 Australian dollars. So very cool. And I've started to notice I've gotten into a bit of a habit of finding John Barth novels face first, where with both this one and with Sabbatical, because it just has his author profile on the back, and I pick the book up and I see his face, and then I turn it around and see what the book is. It's just a kind of funny habit. And moving over, I've got a healthy dose of Beckett here. I really love, of course, his trilogy, but I'm relatively sort of kind of keen to read Dream of Fair to Middling Women. I think the next book of his I'll read is definitely Murphy. Yeah, next up, nothing too crazy here. Pretty decent balance of books that I have and have not yet read. Radio Benjamin was a recent acquisition, which I'm keen to learn about Walter Benjamin, but I don't know Don't know that much about him, except that I've read some of his essays. Bertolt Brecht's got some cool plays. It's a nice kind of aesthetically old version that I think just has... I know it's got Mother Courage, but it's got some others as well. And also The Good Person of Szechuan. And I've been getting an immense amount of hype for people wanting me to read Solenoid. Rest assured, that will be read this year. Some more scans, some more books that I don't think are particularly new to this channel, except, as always, pointing out how much I'm a fan of Carson. And maybe a book that I'd like to sort of kind of read pretty soonish is The Exemplary Stories by Cervantes. And also, House of Leaves, this is an interesting one. I just have no motivation to read this book. I have to be honest. I know people talk about it. I know it's this great, metafictional thing. I know I'm a guy who likes metafictional works, but just every time I see it, my interaction with House of Leaves is always exactly the same, which is that I pick it up, I flick through it, I do this, and I say, oh, interesting. And then I close it and put it back here. And I've done this probably a dozen times this year already, and I just don't think I'm gonna read this book anytime soon. I don't know. If anyone's like, hey, suck it up, it's really, really worth it, but I don't know, man. I just can't build up the motivation to read this book. Again, nothing particularly crazy in this section. Maybe the most recent acquisitions were Helen Garner's stories, which has come, recommended because some friends in a book club that I go to are big fans of Helen Garner's stories. And also a fun one, this was a nice kind of Christmas surprise, was that my housemate bought me Les Miserables, which is a humongous book, and I am keen to read it, but it is just quite enormous, so I need to find a time when I can actually fit it into the reading schedule. But keen to read it because I haven't read anything by Victor Hugo. Books that I have definitely already talked about on this channel, except maybe the only highlight is that I think Finnegan's Wake is going to be the final boss of reading this year. I think this is going to be my 12th or I guess 13th video on or my 13th book review. But everything else pretty par for the course. I don't think I'm gonna read much else soon, although I am going to experiment with listening to an audiobook of Ulysses because I have already read it, but I'd like to kind of just see what an audiobook experience is like. Here are some more books that I know I've talked about. Magic Mountain could be cool to read. I know it came highly recommended by a lot of people, especially Maria at Strange Lucidity, but just again another sort of big book that I don't know if I have the motivation to read right now. Okay, so first, the elephant in the room, which is that there is an alarmingly big gap right next to part 1 of Robert Musil's The Man Without Qualities, which I think you can understand what book I'm currently reading from that. Other books that I'm keen to read this year, definitely want to read Ovid's Metamorphoses. And I don't know if it's a this year project, but maybe, it depends how long it is. I'd like to read The Third Policeman from Flann O'Brien, because I've already read At Swim Two Birds and I thought it was awesome. The Cantos of Ezra Pound, so I know that Seth over at Waste Mailing List has been, the last 12 months have been him really falling in love with Ezra Pound, and I've toyed with this idea of making videos of books I'm not smart enough to read, and I don't really ever get that many books, but basically Ezra Pound is just always on that list, which maybe one day I'll make that video and that could be fun. Get some motivation from my viewers that I could actually read certain books. Again, more books, nothing crazy. Of course, like everybody, have the humongous complete selected works of Shakespeare, and honestly, there's so many Shakespeare works, and these collections are often so affordable that sometimes I kind of reckon that it's worth just buying another one of these and ripping out the pages of the plays that you actually want to read, because it's like, obviously I don't want to be carrying this whole thing around, but you end up spending hundreds of dollars if you just actually try and read it. So, or if you actually just buy single versions of all the plays. I don't know if I put it on my radar to read The Tale of Genji this year. It would be cool, but it is. I don't know. Did I plan for reading that? I'll have to double check that. The most interesting stuff that I've got here is probably these Gertrude Steins that I'd like to flick through at some point. Yeah, these 3 books are great, but they are not making the cut, so I'm going to be taking them home soon just because I know I'm not going to be reading them anytime soon. I know for sure Volman's New Bright and Risen Angels is on the plan to be read this year. And also David Foster Wallace's The Pale King, which I have a feeling I'm going to end up liking more than Infinite Jest. Peter Watts' Call, Firefall made an appearance in videos, or like books that I love that I haven't made videos for, which was Blindsight. Basically, I just want to read Echopraxia, and honestly, I probably do want to read Blindsight again. I reckon I'm going to enjoy it quite a lot. And Carpentaria by Alexis Wright is another book that I'm going to be reading this year. So this is basically all of the fiction that I have. There's some bleed in of there being works that are technically non-fiction, but if there's, because it's a collection, but if there's any form of fiction, it basically was brought down here. But now I'm going to go over to the table and just show you where all of my non-fiction is. Okay, cool. So this first pile that I'm going to show you is and of religion, which is pretty cool. So obviously we've got the Bible by God, but I've also got, what are ones that I've read? I've read basically these 3. Fox's Book of Martyrs is cool, and like I've just flicked around. I think I read about Anne Askew, but I haven't read much else. Graves' The White Goddess is on the agenda for this year, and also I have this cool, I actually found, this is a pretty cool collection, which is just the facsimile editions of Blavatsky's The Secret Doctrine, which is really cool. And it's so odd, I found them in Burklow Books, which I featured or talked about on my 5 favourite Sydney bookstores, and it was so weird because I found the first volume and then I found and I was like, oh, okay, I'll just rest on that. And then I went back, I think 3 weeks later, and volume 2 was sitting in exactly the same spot as volume 1. So it's kind of funny that it just was provided to me like that. Next up, I've got Is and of Philosophy. So I'll just try and do a general scan. You know, a lot of this stuff it's like just have on the bookshelf to hopefully maybe read someday, but definitely Hegel's Phenomenology of Spirit is joining Ezra Pound in the books that I'm not smart enough to read. Ones that I'm interested in, you know, I've got the essays of Montaigne there. I've really been recently getting interested in semiotics, so I've got this book by Sebioc, also Saussure, and just this nice aesthetic introducing semiotics book. But yeah, maybe the only book out of these that I think I'd like to do a full read is Said's Orientalism. Okay, and I've been trying to avoid it, but I know that I basically have to go handheld now because it's just getting a little bit cumbersome. But this next pile is and of biographies, or just about people. Some cool stuff here that I'm keen to read. Probably the most fun or interesting one is this the letters of Sylvia Beach, where, you know, on one page there's a letter to Hemingway, Joyce, and, you know, just a bunch of other people. I just always forget how much of a titan she is in, you know, the history of literature. Maybe the other one that I'd like to read is Diaghilev's Belarus's. This next pile is basically non-fiction regarding writing, so most recent edition is probably Bloom's The Western Canon, which is on the bottom, but yeah, everything else, a kind of balance of some stuff I've read and some stuff that I've not read. And finally, this is non-fiction everything else, which of course we've got my favourite book, The Anatomy of Melancholy, on the bottom. Lend Me Your Ears is cool. It's a collection of great speeches, but there is a strong American bias, but there are also some great speeches from antiquity, like sermons from Jesus or from the Buddha and so on. But yeah, the Book of Disquiet, this is has been definitely making the rounds, and I should probably prioritize it just because of how much people are talking about it, but, you know, should prioritize everything, I suppose. But yeah, maybe the one that I'm actively flicking through is Walter Benjamin's One Way Street and Other Writings. And also I'm reading this Life of J. Diller and Mythologies by Barth. Okie dokie, so I have no idea how jank this video ended up being. I have a feeling that maybe there was something funky with the audio, just with the placement of the microphone. But, we gave it a go. We'll see how it turns out in the editing process, and if I end up keeping it, then you'll know it was all right. Yeah. Thanks for watching. I hope you all enjoyed a little bit of a scan of some of the books I own. I do have a couple of others scattered around. They're mostly just art books, like these sort of almost desk reads. But yeah, that's pretty much all of the books that I have here. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little sneak into what my proposed reading themes are going to be for the next couple of years. If there's anything here that you saw that you would like for me to prioritize, or you think would be valuable based on my tastes, then definitely let me know. I'll be keen to hear your opinion. Once more, thanks for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video, which is going to be a review for a very long, very big, very great book. Thanks.